a clumsy intern, a cold CEO, and an unlikely love story. Before we begin the story, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. It was a late afternoon in Manhattan's financial district. The rain wasn't just falling, it was pouring, hammering the sidewalks like a million tiny needles piercing through the damp night air. Streetlights reflected off the puddles, creating a shimmering mosaic of city lights, while people hurried along, their faces hidden beneath umbrellas, desperate to escape the bone-chilling downpour. In the middle of it all, a woman was running. Isla Bennett, 30 years old, an ambitious but hopelessly clumsy attorney, was darting down the sidewalk, struggling against the elements. One arm clutched a stack of legal documents, her lifeline at this moment, because if they got wet, her entire career might as well dissolve along with the ink. The other hand? She was desperately trying to keep her high heel from slipping off, a problem she had meant to fix this morning but never found the time. Her breath came in short gasps, misting in the cold air. As if things weren't bad enough, the broken umbrella hooked onto her handbag, flailing uselessly at her side, snagging at her every step. And then, bam! Everything happened in an instant. Isla collided head first into what felt like a solid wall. Except it wasn't a wall. It was a man. The steaming cup of hot chocolate in her hand flew upward, suspended in mid-air for what felt like a slow-motion disaster. For a fleeting second, she saw the dark liquid spiral against the gray backdrop of the stormy city before it came crashing down, not onto the ground, but all over him. His pristine white dress shirt was instantly ruined, an abstract splash of deep brown spreading across the expensive fabric. Isla stumbled back, gasping as if the very air had been knocked out of her lungs. The man in front of her stood perfectly still, his gaze lowering to assess the damage to his shirt, the stain blooming like an irreversible mistake. And that man, Nathaniel Carter. Cold, calculated, utterly composed. The absolute authority at Carter and Company, one of the most prestigious law firms in the city. A man who never made mistakes, and never tolerated them from others. A lump formed in Isla's throat. It felt like she had just hurled a rock into the middle of a perfectly still lake, now waiting for the tidal wave to crash back down on her. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she stammered. I'll pay for the dry cleaning." Her hands fumbled as she yanked open her purse, pulling out a crumpled $10 bill, thrusting it toward him in sheer desperation. Nathaniel slowly lifted his gaze to meet hers, his eyes sharp, assessing, as if deciding whether to sue her for property damage. His voice was low, unyielding. "You think I dry clean my shirts with pocket change?" A suffocating silence stretched between them. The world around them continued, indifferent, but to Isla, time had come to a grinding halt. 3 seconds passed. 4. Then, Nathaniel laughed. If anyone from Carter and Company had been here to witness it, they would have sworn they were experiencing some kind of rare astronomical event. The CEO, impeccable, untouchable, had just laughed. Isla gawked at him, utterly dumbfounded. Did you just laugh?" Nathaniel smirked, slowly peeling off his suit jacket, his shirt still stained with hot chocolate. "You," he said, his voice laced with amusement, "are an absolute disaster." He paused before adding, "But an interesting one." She hadn't realized it yet, but from this moment forward her life would never be the same. And neither had Nathaniel, who had no idea that the clumsy woman standing in front of him was about to turn his perfectly ordered world completely upside down. Isla Bennett stood in front of Carter and Company, one of the most powerful law firms in the city. The towering skyscraper loomed above her, its glass windows reflecting the golden glow of the setting sun after a heavy downpour. She took a deep breath, her throat dry. This was the most important interview of her career. a chance to finally step into the world she had been striving for. But that didn't mean she wasn't nervous. She smoothed out the wrinkles on her business dress, even though she had ironed it 3 times that morning. Everything had to be perfect. No more mishaps. But what Isla didn't know was that fate had other plans. She stepped into the elevator, her palms clammy. When the doors slid open, she hurried into the conference room where the interview was being held. Something felt off. The silence in the room was unnerving. No one spoke. Then her eyes landed on a familiar face. At the center of the panel, seated in the chairman's seat, was none other than Nathaniel Carter. Nathaniel Carter, the man she had spilled an entire cup of hot chocolate on just hours ago. His gaze locked onto hers, expression unreadable. A suffocating silence filled the room. Isla froze. Her throat tightened, and instinctively she took a step back, as if she could still escape this nightmare. But before she could process her next move, Nathaniel tilted his head slightly and spoke in his signature cold, composed tone. "Well, we meet again?" A simple sentence, yet it landed with the force of a hammer. Her brain told her to stay calm, but her body did the exact opposite. Isla swallowed hard, trying to act like nothing was wrong. But the universe had other plans. Within just 10 minutes of the interview, she had dropped her stack of legal documents, scattering them across the floor right in front of the hiring committee. Accidentally called the HR director Uncle Henry because of his silver hair. Pressed the wrong button on her phone, blasting "I will survive" into the dead silence of the meeting. She fumbled to turn it off, but her hands were shaking so badly that she accidentally hit repeat instead. "I will survive! Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive!" The room turned to stone. Every pair of eyes locked onto Isla. She felt like the floor was about to open up beneath her and swallow her whole. The only person who remained completely unfazed? Nathaniel. He sat back in his chair, fingers interlocked, watching her like she was an intriguing science experiment gone terribly wrong. The panel members exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a stern-looking woman with dark hair, set her pen down and cleared her throat. "We appreciate your enthusiasm, but perhaps—" Nathaniel suddenly spoke. "Hire her." The room went silent. "Excuse me?" The HR director blinked in disbelief. Nathaniel leaned back, his expression cool and unreadable. "I want to see what she does next." A ripple of shock spread through the room. No one could believe that Nathaniel Carter, the man known for his relentless pursuit of perfection, had just decided to hire a candidate who had managed to turn a professional interview into an absolute disaster in under 10 minutes. But Isla didn't have time to question it. Somehow, against all odds, she had just survived the most disastrous interview of her life. Less than an hour after Isla left the conference room, Carter and Company was buzzing with gossip. "Who is she? Is she the CEO's secret niece? No way, she's his secret girlfriend. Or a witch." Rumors spread faster than the company's Wi-Fi, and somewhere in the office, Nathaniel Carter simply smirked to himself. No one knew what he was thinking. The only certainty? Isla Bennett had just entered a game she didn't even know the rules to. And she had no idea this was only the beginning. The offices of Carter and Company were nothing short of imposing. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows framed the breathtaking skyline of Manhattan, while sleek, polished marble floors reflected the soft glow of modern chandeliers. Every detail, from the minimalist desks to the precisely arranged artwork, screamed perfection. This wasn't just a law firm. It was a meticulously curated kingdom of order, efficiency, and power. And today, Isla Bennett was about to turn it into a battlefield. She had barely survived the most disastrous interview of her life, but against all odds, she had landed the job. Now, she stood in front of her brand new desk, her heart pounding. This was it, the beginning of a new chapter. She inhaled deeply, smoothing down the crisp white blouse she had chosen specifically to project an aura of professionalism. Today, she would be perfect. No clumsiness, no mistakes. She had no idea that fate had other plans. It started small. A simple email. Her first assignment was straightforward. Forward a confidential internal memo about a major upcoming case to the senior partners. Isla, eager to prove herself, quickly typed out the subject line. Urgent, confidential legal memo. She double-checked the email addresses, pressed send, and leaned back with satisfaction. 30 seconds later, a ding echoed across the office, then another, and another. A flood of notifications popped up on every screen. Associates frowned. Paralegals whispered. Somewhere, a secretary gasped audibly. Isla frowned, confused, until a reply hit her inbox. Hi, Isla. I think you meant to send this to the partners, not the entire janitorial staff. Her stomach plummeted. With horror, she clicked open her sent items and saw the unforgivable mistake. The top-secret memo, containing critical legal strategies for a billion-dollar lawsuit, had been sent to the entire maintenance team. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, as if she could somehow pull the email back through sheer willpower. Maybe they won't read it, she whispered to herself. Then, as if the universe had heard her plea and decided to mock her, a new email arrived. Thanks for the update. Not sure how this applies to mopping the floors, but we'll be on standby. Let us know if you need an extra bucket. Still reeling from her first catastrophe, Isla decided she needed a reset. A fresh cup of coffee would do the trick. The office's break room was a masterpiece of corporate luxury. Imported Italian espresso machines, a dazzling array of gourmet creamers, and marble countertops that gleamed under the soft lighting. She carefully poured herself a cup, determined not to spill a single drop. And then, as if controlled by some unseen force, her elbow clipped the edge of the counter. Everything slowed. She could see it happen, the coffee tilting, swirling, and then cascading in a perfect arc through the air, directly onto Nathaniel Carter's desk. The dark liquid splattered across neatly stacked legal documents, soaking into the pristine mahogany surface. A thin, steaming river crept dangerously close to his phone and laptop. Nathaniel, who had been reviewing a case file, slowly lifted his gaze. For a solid 5 seconds he didn't move, didn't blink. Isla stood frozen, palms pressed together as if in prayer. Her brain screamed, "Run!" Her mouth, however, betrayed her. Would you believe me if I said I planned this as a new strategy to test workplace resilience? Nathaniel exhaled through his nose. The entire office held its breath. He reached for a napkin, dabbing at the mess with excruciating slowness. Then, in a voice so calm it was terrifying, he said, "This is the second time today." She gulped. Technically, it's the third if you count the chocolate incident. Nathaniel arched a brow. Would you prefer I start keeping score? Determined to salvage what was left of her dignity, Isla threw herself into her next task, preparing for a video conference with an important German client. Nathaniel had specifically instructed her to be professional, respectful, and, above all, precise. She nodded confidently at the screen as the call connected. A distinguished older man with silver hair appeared. Isla straightened her posture and smiled warmly. "Guten Tag, mein Freund," she said cheerfully. The client blinked. Nathaniel went still. The executive boardroom at Carter & Company was nothing short of imposing. A vast space, bathed in natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. A gleaming black marble conference table stretched across the center of the room, surrounded by sleek, high-backed leather chairs. Every detail was meticulously designed to radiate power, authority, and control. This was where the most high-stakes deals were made, where billion-dollar agreements were signed with a flick of a pen. And now, Isla Bennett, the woman who had accidentally sent confidential legal memos to the janitorial staff and spilled coffee on the CEO's desk, was sitting at that very table. Not just sitting. She had been assigned as the lead assistant on a massive legal case, a multi-million-dollar corporate acquisition. Nathaniel Carter himself had made the decision. When Isla first heard the news, her first thought wasn't excitement. It was pure, unfiltered panic. She had expected to be relegated to filing documents in a dark, forgotten corner of the office, not thrust into the middle of high-powered negotiations. And yet, there she was. Nathaniel sat at the head of the table, his suit impeccable, his expression unreadable. His mere presence commanded the room. To his right sat Thomas Winthrop, a billionaire investor and CEO of a global conglomerate. Winthrop was the kind of man whose handshake alone could make or break an entire industry. This was serious business. And Isla had made a silent vow to herself. No mistakes. No disasters. Today I will be flawless. Everything started well enough. Isla took notes diligently, made sure all legal documents were in order, and even managed to avoid spilling coffee on anything or anyone. But then came the introductions. Nathaniel leaned slightly toward her. His voice was quiet but firm. Address him formally. Isla nodded, her nerves taut as she turned to their esteemed guest. And then it happened. It's a pleasure to meet you, Uncle Tom. The room went dead silent. Nathaniel stiffened. Thomas Winthrop, one of the most influential businessmen in the country, blinked slowly. Isla's entire body turned to ice. What had she just said? Her brain scrambled to rewind the last 10 seconds, as if she could somehow take it back. Uncle Tom? Uncle. Tom. Winthrop's steely gaze fixed on her, a man who was used to being addressed as Sir, Mr. Winthrop, or Your Eminence, but never Uncle Tom. Nathaniel exhaled sharply. Isla wished, prayed for an earthquake to swallow her whole. Then, out of nowhere, Winthrop laughed. Not just a polite chuckle, but a full, hearty laugh that reverberated around the boardroom. Well, he said, shaking his head, I suppose I haven't been called that since my nieces were in preschool. The tension broke like shattered glass. Nathaniel, still recovering from what had just transpired, shot Isla a glance. A mix of bewilderment, disbelief, and something else. By some miracle, the meeting continued. Isla focused on taking notes, keeping quiet, not drawing any attention to herself. And then, as she reached for her pen, it slipped through her fingers. A simple mistake. Except instead of landing harmlessly on the table, the pen took an unexpected trajectory, bouncing off the polished surface and right into the massive, custom-built, state-of-the-art fish tank behind her. A tank filled with priceless koi fish. The room stilled, the fish scattered. Bubbles rose to the surface like tiny, judgmental witnesses. Nathaniel closed his eyes for exactly 2 seconds before reopening them, as if silently asking the universe why it had placed this woman in his life. Winthrop glanced between Isla and the now disturbed aquatic display. I assume, he said dryly, this is a new legal tactic? Isla smiled weakly. Just testing the waters? The meeting was almost over. All they had to do was go over the final slides, a simple PowerPoint Nathaniel had meticulously prepared, outlining the legal framework of the acquisition. Isla, eager to make up for her earlier disasters, took the initiative and pressed the button to share the screen. and instead of Nathaniel's professional presentation, a full-screen image of a corgi wearing a tiny royal crown appeared on the massive boardroom projector. A corgi. Nathaniel's personal desktop wallpaper. For a full 3 seconds, no one spoke. Winthrop's face was unreadable. Nathaniel sat completely motionless. Then, Winthrop laughed again. "I have to say, Carter," he mused, "I never took you for a dog person." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but he simply cleared his throat, reached forward, and calmly turned off the projector. Isla, meanwhile, was seconds away from a full-blown heart attack. After the meeting, Isla fully expected to be fired on the spot. Instead, as the boardroom emptied, she hesitated near the door, stealing a glance at Nathaniel. He was watching her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You're not firing me?" she asked, still unsure if she was dreaming. Nathaniel tilted his head slightly, as if considering it. Then, in a voice laced with something dangerously close to amusement, he said, "You're not what I expected." Isla swallowed. "Is that good?" His lips tugged into the ghost of a smirk. "Let's just say," he murmured, "you're proving to be interesting." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Isla standing there, completely speechless. Nathaniel Carter never allowed chaos in his life. He valued precision, control, predictability. And yet, Isla Bennett had walked in and disrupted everything, and for the first time in years. He wasn't sure if he hated it, or if he wanted to see what she would do next. The atmosphere inside Carter and Company was still buzzing after the infamous boardroom incident. Nathaniel Carter's unshakable reputation as the firm's cold, untouchable CEO had taken an unexpected hit, all because of a single woman. No one in the company had ever seen him laugh before, not once, and yet he had done so, twice in one meeting, with her. The rumors were relentless. "Did you see how he looked at her? She's definitely sleeping with the CEO. Or maybe she's blackmailing him? No, she has to be a witch. That's the only explanation." The truth? Nathaniel himself wasn't sure what Isla Bennett was. Isla, however, had bigger problems. Despite miraculously keeping her job, she was now the center of attention at the firm, and not in a good way. Colleagues whispered behind her back. Some side-eyed her in the hallways. Others flat out ignored her. She had worked her entire life to be taken seriously in the legal world. And now? She was known as the woman who called a billionaire Uncle Tom, nearly drowned koi fish, and exposed the CEO's love for royal corgis. She was mortified. That was when Nathaniel approached her desk. "You and I need to talk," he said. His tone was unreadable, but Isla could already feel her stomach twisting into knots. They stepped into his office, a space so sleek and intimidating it felt like stepping into the lair of a Bond villain. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, while dark wood and minimalist decor emphasized power and control. Nathaniel took a seat behind his desk, hands folded in front of him. He studied her the way a scientist might examine an unpredictable experiment. Finally, he spoke. "I have a proposal." Isla, already sweating, gulped. "Oh God, am I getting fired in the form of a proposal?" Nathaniel exhaled through his nose, half annoyed, half amused. "No, Bennett. If I were firing you, you'd already be gone." That didn't make her feel better. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. "You've become a topic of discussion in the office," he said carefully. "If you want to be taken seriously, you need to change your image." Isla stiffened. "My image? You need to learn professional grace, confidence, poise." She narrowed her eyes. "Are you saying I lack poise?" Nathaniel gave her a flat look. "You called a billionaire investor Uncle Tom, and displayed my corgi wallpaper on a 70-inch projector screen. Isla crossed her arms. Okay, fair point. He leaned back in his chair, clearly satisfied with her moment of defeat. So, here's my offer. I'm giving you 30 days. In that time, I will personally teach you how to operate in high society, navigate corporate etiquette, and stop turning business meetings into comedy sketches. She blinked. You're going to train me? Think of it as an experiment, he said smoothly. You claim you're more than just a walking disaster. Prove it. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. And what do you get out of this? Nathaniel smirked. If you succeed, I'll admit you're more than just an amusing liability. But if you fail, well... He paused. Let's just say I'll enjoy the entertainment. Isla stared at him, mouth slightly open. This man, this ridiculous, infuriating, arrogant man was essentially betting against her. Her pride flared. Fine, she said, standing tall. You want to bet? I accept. Nathaniel's smirk deepened. This is going to be interesting. Nathaniel wasted no time. That very evening, Isla found herself standing in the grand ballroom of the most exclusive members-only club in Manhattan. Chandeliers dripped with crystal, casting golden light across the polished marble floors. Wealthy socialites sipped expensive champagne, murmuring in hushed, refined voices. The air smelled like power, money, and imported French cologne. Nathaniel, as always, looked like he belonged. His tailored suit was impeccable, his posture effortless, his presence commanding. Isla, meanwhile, was experiencing a personal crisis. She had spent 20 minutes practicing how to walk in heels without looking like a newborn deer. It wasn't going well. As Nathaniel led her toward a group of high-profile executives, she whispered urgently, "What do I do? What if I say the wrong thing?" "Then you'll entertain me," he murmured back. Her glare could have set fire to his suit. They reached the group. Nathaniel introduced her. Isla tried to smile politely, and then she stepped forward, only to catch her heel on the edge of the carpet. Time slowed. She reached out, trying to steady herself, only to grab onto the nearest waiter. The waiter stumbled, his tray tipped, and an entire flute of champagne went flying, directly onto a senator's wife. A sharp gasp ripped through the ballroom. The elegant woman stood frozen, her priceless silk gown now soaked in expensive champagne. Nathaniel closed his eyes. Isla's soul left her body. Silence. Then, the senator's wife burst out laughing. "Darling," she said, shaking champagne droplets off her sleeve, "I can't tell you how refreshing this is. These events are so boring. Finally, some excitement." The tension shattered. Laughter rippled through the group. Even Nathaniel, who had been prepared for disaster, looked slightly impressed. She had somehow survived. Again. That night, as Nathaniel and Isla walked toward his car, she finally let out the breath she had been holding. Okay, that could have gone worse. Nathaniel gave her a sideways glance. You tripped, nearly took down a waiter, and doused a senator's wife in alcohol. Exactly. Could have been worse. To her surprise, Nathaniel let out a low chuckle. You are something else, Bennett. She looked up at him, expecting sarcasm. Instead, his expression was different. Like he was seeing her in a new light. Like he was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, this ridiculous, chaotic woman was exactly what his world had been missing. And for the first time, Nathaniel wasn't so sure he wanted her to change at all. What he didn't know, Isla had already changed him, and she still had no idea. The day started like any other. The halls of Carter and Company buzzed with the quiet hum of high-stakes negotiations and whispered legal strategies. The air smelled of freshly brewed espresso, polished leather, and the faint tension of multi-million-dollar deals in progress. Isla Bennett had, for once, managed to go an entire morning without causing a major catastrophe. She was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, her luck was turning. Then the elevator doors slid open, and she walked in. Catherine Monroe, the woman who was supposed to be ancient history. She stepped into the office like she owned the place, which, in a way, she once had. Tall, poised, and devastatingly beautiful, Catherine was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Her long, silky brown hair cascaded effortlessly down her back, and her emerald green dress hugged her figure with the precision of a tailor who had been paid an ungodly amount. Everything about her radiated power, grace, and just a hint of ice-cold calculation. The room reacted instantly. Whispers spread like wildfire. Is that Catherine Monroe? Didn't she and Carter break up ages ago? She's a legend around here. They were the perfect power couple. Why is she back? Isla, who had been reviewing a contract, felt every hair on her body stand up. Then she saw Nathaniel. For a split second, just a fraction of a second, his expression changed. Not surprise, not happiness, something else. Then it was gone. His face returned to the cool, unreadable mask he always wore. Catherine smiled, slow and confident. "Hello, Nathaniel," she purred. "Miss me?" Catherine's return sent shockwaves through the office. But what made it worse? She wasn't just here for a casual visit. No, she had just been hired as the firm's newest legal consultant. That meant she wasn't leaving anytime soon. Nathaniel barely reacted. If he was unsettled by her presence, he didn't show it. But Isla was deeply, profoundly unsettled, and she wasn't the only one. Because while Isla and Nathaniel's relationship wasn't exactly defined, the office had already formed its own conclusions. And now, with Catherine back, the whispers only grew louder. Well, I guess that means Carter and Bennett are over before they even started. Catherine and Nathaniel belong together. They're both cutthroat. They're both perfect. That new girl doesn't stand a chance. Isla tried to ignore it. She told herself she didn't care. But then came the photos. It started subtly, a post here, a comment there. Then the photo dropped, a carefully curated, seemingly innocent Instagram post from Catherine's account. A picture of her and Nathaniel, taken during their past relationship. She looked flawless. He looked at ease. The caption? Some things never change. The internet exploded. Isla nearly choked on her coffee. The post had only been up for 20 minutes, but the damage was already done. The comment section was a war zone. They were always perfect together. Wait, is Carter back with his ex? Sorry, but Catherine is out of his league. No competition. Who's that assistant girl anyway? Isla stared at the screen, her emotions a hurricane of irritation, confusion, and something dangerously close to jealousy. Nathaniel hadn't said a word about it. He hadn't acknowledged the post, but he hadn't denied it either. And that bothered her, so Isla did the only logical thing. She posted her own photo. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't professionally staged. It was Nathaniel sitting at his desk, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, eating a cup of instant ramen. She had taken it by accident one evening, when they had been stuck working late. The caption ? Not everything stays the same. Some things get better. Within an hour, the comments exploded. OMG, why is this so cute? Carter eating ramen? Who is this man? I didn't know he could look normal. I'm Team Ramen Couple now. And just like that, a war had started. Catherine posted again. Another polished, perfect memory. A candlelit dinner, wine glasses clinking. Some people will never understand this kind of class. Isla, fueled by a mix of stubbornness and spite, posted in response. This time, a photo of Nathaniel in the break room, stealing one of her cheeseburgers. The caption ? He doesn't need class. He needs cheeseburgers. The battle had officially escalated. Then, something no one saw coming happened. Nathaniel Carter broke his silence, not with words, not with a press statement, but with an action. That evening, just as the war of posts was reaching its peak, Nathaniel walked straight into Isla's office. He didn't knock. He didn't wait. He placed his phone in front of her. Isla looked down. The screen showed a brand new Instagram post. His Instagram post. It was a picture of him and Isla. Nothing fancy. Nothing posed. Just a simple shot from last week, when she had fallen asleep at her desk after working too late, her head resting on a pile of legal documents. And right beside her, Nathaniel, his suit jacket draped over her shoulders like an afterthought. The caption? Some things are worth changing for. Her heart stopped. Why did you post this? She whispered. Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he smirked. Because I don't belong to Catherine. He paused, eyes never leaving hers. I belong right here. And just like that, the war was over. And Isla had just won a battle. She didn't even know she was fighting. The air inside Carter and Company felt thicker than usual. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Carter couldn't focus. Not on the multi-million-dollar case sitting on his desk. Not on the voice of his assistant reading off important schedules. His mind was elsewhere, somewhere between frustration and something much closer to panic. And then the headline dropped. It was everywhere. Across finance news sites, business tabloids, even trending on social media. A single damning statement. Nathaniel Carter never stopped loving me. Catherine Monroe, exclusive interview. The office erupted. Phones rang non-stop. Emails flooded in. Investors demanded answers. But Nathaniel, he didn't care about any of that. The moment he saw the headline, he knew exactly who it would affect the most. And he was already too late. By the time Nathaniel reached Isla's office, he knew something was wrong. There was no sound. No usual clatter of her typing too aggressively. No quiet muttering as she tried to decipher legal jargon. The space felt empty. His gaze landed on her desk. Neat, organized. But there was one thing that shouldn't be there. A single envelope. His fingers tightened as he reached for it, unfolding the letter with deliberate precision. And then he saw it. Her resignation letter. No long explanation, no dramatic farewell. Just one short, simple line. I refuse to be caught in the middle of something that was never mine. Nathaniel stared at the words, his chest tightening. Something in him snapped. Because this wasn't just about losing an employee, he was losing her. Isla walks away. Isla had already left the building. No dramatic exits, no final words, just a quiet disappearance, the kind that hurt more than any fight ever could. She told herself she was doing the right thing, that walking away was the only logical choice, that Nathaniel wasn't hers to fight for. But logic didn't stop the ache in her chest as she stepped into the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan, her resignation letter officially ending whatever unspoken thing had been growing between them. She had spent weeks pretending not to care, pretending that the rumors, the whispers, the glances Nathaniel shared with Catherine didn't affect her. But the moment she saw Catherine's interview plastered across every news outlet, she knew. She wasn't going to let herself become a footnote in someone else's love story. So she left, before it could hurt even more. Nathaniel sat at his desk, the letter still in his hands. His office, normally a place of unshakable control, felt unbearably quiet. The thought hit him suddenly, sharply. He had never known Carter and company without her, never realized how much space Isla had taken up in his world. The coffee stains on his desk, the ridiculous conversations about whether pineapple belonged on pizza, the way she could ruin an entire corporate meeting and somehow make it better. And now, she was gone. Nathaniel closed his eyes, gripping the resignation letter so tightly the paper crumpled beneath his fingers. Had he just lost the only thing that actually mattered? What he didn't know. Isla wasn't planning to come back, and for the first time in his life, Nathaniel Carter didn't have a plan either. The air outside was crisp, the night sky a deep shade of navy, twinkling with city lights. Manhattan never truly slept, but in this quiet moment, Isla Bennett felt like she was the only person in the world. She stood on the front steps of her small apartment, holding a single envelope. It wasn't just any envelope. The golden wax seal at the back bore the unmistakable insignia of Carter and Company. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, unfolding the thick, expensive paper. And then she read the words. "Come to the company gala. If you're not there, it won't be the same." There was no signature, but she didn't need one. She knew exactly who had sent it. For days, Isla had told herself that walking away was the right choice, that leaving Carter and Company, leaving Nathaniel, was necessary. But this was a crack in the armor she had built around herself. She paced her small living room, biting her lip, torn between pride and the undeniable pull in her chest. Should she go? Should she pretend she didn't care? But even as she asked herself the question, she already knew the answer. The venue was breathtaking. A grand ballroom in one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels, the kind of place where power and wealth intertwined effortlessly. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in a soft golden glow. Guests in impeccable suits and elegant gowns floated across the marble floor, champagne glasses in hand. The music was subtle, the kind that whispered wealth and sophistication. And then there was Isla. She had spent an eternity trying to pick the right dress. Something elegant, something poised, something that would finally make her blend in rather than stand out. And yet, in true Isla fashion, the moment she stepped through the towering double doors, her heel caught on the carpet, and just like that, she stumbled forward. It wasn't dramatic, not a full collapse, but enough to make a noise, enough to send a few gasps rippling through the elite crowd. Heat rushed to her face. Of course, this would happen. Then a low chuckle cut through the room. Isla froze, because she knew that laugh. It was deep, rich, entirely too familiar. She turned, and there he was. Nathaniel Carter, standing just a few feet away, looking at her like she was the most fascinating thing in the entire room. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Nathaniel shook his head slightly, his lips twitching. And he laughed. Not out of mockery, not out of amusement, but because, in that moment, everything felt like it had come full circle. "You know," he said, stepping closer, his voice just low enough for only her to hear. "You are incredibly consistent." Isla rolled her eyes, trying to ignore the way her heart was hammering. Yeah, she muttered. "Just say it. I'm a disaster." Nathaniel smirked. A very entertaining disaster. For a second, it was just the two of them. The grand ballroom, the murmuring guests, the elegance of the night. It all faded away. All that was left was the man who once built his world around control, and the woman who had unknowingly torn it apart in the best way possible. The unanswered question. "Why did you invite me?" Isla finally asked, her voice quieter now. Nathaniel studied her, his usual guarded expression flickering, just for a moment. Then, with a slow smile, he simply said, "Because without you, it wouldn't be the same." And Isla? For the first time in weeks, she believed him. The Carter and Company annual gala was in full swing, a night of power, prestige, and carefully curated elegance. The grand ballroom shimmered under the golden glow of chandeliers, casting soft reflections over the sea of Manhattan's elite. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter mingled with the smooth hum of a live orchestra. Every guest in attendance was a somebody: CEOs, investors, top attorneys, and a few strategically placed media representatives. It was a flawless evening, and then Nathaniel Carter stepped onto the stage. The room fell completely silent. Because Nathaniel Carter never took the stage. Nathaniel speaks. He adjusted the microphone, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room, but his focus landed on one person. Isla Bennett. Standing near the back, half hidden behind a waiter, as if she could somehow escape whatever was about to happen. Nathaniel smirked slightly. Not a chance. He lifted the microphone to his lips, his voice smooth, controlled. Most of you know me as a man of structure, of logic, of precision. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. Nathaniel Carter was known for his cold efficiency, for running Carter and Company with unwavering discipline. For years, I believed the law, like life, required absolute control. That success came from eliminating chaos, that emotions, distractions, unpredictability were weaknesses. He paused. His gaze never wavered. And then she walked into my office. A ripple of curiosity and excitement spread through the room, because everyone knew who she was. Nathaniel exhaled a small laugh, shaking his head. She was a walking disaster. She spilled coffee on my desk, twice. Laughter erupted. She sent confidential emails to the janitorial staff. More laughter. Isla groaned, sinking further behind the waiter. She nearly drowned a billionaire's koi fish. At this point, the audience was in tears. Isla peeked out from behind her hiding spot, crossing her arms. "Okay, we don't need to list everything," she muttered. Nathaniel's lips tugged into a smirk. Then his voice softened. "But she also made me laugh when I forgot how." Silence. The room stilled, because this was new. Nathaniel Carter didn't talk about his emotions, and yet here he was, standing in front of New York's most powerful elite, speaking as if the only person in the room was her. She made me rethink everything I thought I knew. She taught me that sometimes the best moments in life come from the unexpected. A long pause, a deep breath. She taught me that chaos can be beautiful. And then Nathaniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps filled the ballroom. Isla froze. The box flipped open, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Her breath hitched. Nathaniel took a single step forward, gaze steady, voice quiet. "Marry me, Isla." The room held its breath. Time stretched. Isla stared at him, at the unshakable, unstoppable, untouchable Nathaniel Carter, and saw a man who had chosen her, not despite her chaos, but because of it. Her lips parted, her heart pounded. And then she nodded. Yes. The ballroom erupted. Applause, cheers, cameras flashing, but none of it mattered. Because the moment Isla stepped onto that stage, the moment Nathaniel slipped the ring onto her finger, the moment he pulled her close and whispered, "You're still wearing mismatched shoes." She knew. She had always belonged here. Did you make it this far? Comment "love" to prove you're a true fan of Isla and Nathaniel. What do you think about this ending? Will their love truly last forever? Or are there still challenges ahead? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed this story. Subscribe to stay tuned for more captivating stories and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.